Hi and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I am going to be going over some 10 top tips for blending like a pro today. This is a really great thing to know how to do, and it's all about coloring. I just love coloring, and I know a lot of you do too. I want to be sure again to say welcome. If this is your first time here, I'm really glad that you found it. And if you have been here lots of times, welcome back. Um, like I said, I'm super excited to share some top 10 tips for using Stampin' Blend alcohol markers. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, so everything I use is Stampin' Up! I live in Northeast Ohio, and my name is Julia. I'm with Julia Sue's Stamping. I'm passionate about stamping, coloring, paper crafting, making cards. Most of all, I'm passionate about sharing the fun of how to do all of that with you. Using coloring markers, especially alcohol markers, adds a lot of fantastic color and dimension to your projects. And with all of these tips, you will truly find yourself to be a pro in no time. So let's dive right in, shall we? Tip number 1 is about proper storage. When you store your alcohol markers, you need to store them horizontally to ensure that the ink distributes evenly within the marker. And always cap them tightly after use to maintain their longevity. Stampin' Up's Stampin' Blends come in twos. You'll get a lighter and a darker. So to keep them together, I use a little hair tie that I buy at the grocery store, and it helps me keep them together, and I always know where a lighter and darker one are together. The skin tone colors come in more than twos, so I don't put them together in the same way. But that is how I store mine, in a drawer. Perhaps you'll have a different way, maybe on a shelf. No matter what though, be sure you store them horizontally to ensure that ink distribution is even. So, tip number 2. To prevent bleeding when you're using the markers, you want to make sure you also use a high quality, thick cardstock. Basic White is a perfect example, and that is a Stampin' Up! Product. This helps keep the ink from bleeding through the paper. Also, you can use a piece of scrap paper underneath your project, some wax paper, and my favorite is the silicone sheet underneath your project to help keep any of excess ink that might go through and bleed through your project and get onto your work surface. So, we're going to have tip number 3 now. I stamped the butterfly from the Labeled with Love stamp set onto a piece of scrap paper. And I'm going to pull out some Stampin' Blends to show you the next tip, which is tip number 3. I have another video all about this card, so be sure you check that out if you would please. I like to go from the lightest color to the darkest color when I do my coloring. And the reason is that it will help blend them easier. When you start with the lightest shade and you gradually add the darker shades, you can help create a smooth transition, and it helps prevent harsh lines when you're coloring. I also, you can see I like to go in a circular motion when I'm coloring. And then I go ahead and I'm going to use the orangey color after that yellow, and I'm putting it into the yellow a little bit, getting it all around and in there. What I'm doing with this then is tip number 4. I'm layering the colors together. I bring them in and layer them. I'm using a reddish color here, And right now you can see it kind of looks like harsh lines. You can definitely see the difference between the different colors that I'm doing. And that's okay, because the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with more colors and layer the colors in. So I go back in with the yellow, and I'm going to go over the orangish color that I had in there, blending it in. That's why they are called Stampin' Blends. The colors end up blending together just beautifully. And you need to go ahead and feel comfortable layering all the different pieces in, just using them over and over and layering more color in. So I got the orange back in again, and layer the colors in and continue blending it until I ended up having this, where you can see how well they're all just blended together. There isn't any particular spot where one color begins and the other. They're all just blended and melded in together. And then I fussy cut that and put it on a card. I'll show you that card at the end. The next one that I want to share with you for our tip number 5 is another butterfly that I stamped out of this Spotlight on Nature, and I also used this for the sentiment on the card I'll show you I make with this one. I used the Irresistible Blooms. I couldn't be happier to have you as my friend. Here's the butterfly that I colored. Oh, and I wanted to share with you, see how it can bleed through? But because I used something to protect my work surface, I don't need to worry about that. So with this card, this time I'm going to go ahead and begin with the lighter color on the outside, and I'm going to use a circular motion as I color it in with the darker yellow. Then I'm going to bring in the orange again, and this time I'm going to have the red in the center of the butterfly instead of on the outside of the butterfly like I did on the first card. And you can hear that I'm snapping the top tightly onto the pen every single time I'm done. And then again, like I said, you go ahead and you go back and you layer colors, layer them in, let them blend together. Very nicely, till you really can't see where one of the colors begins and the other one ends. It's a beautiful ombre, and they blend together absolutely perfectly. There. The colors just blend, and again you can see it would have bled through, but I don't have to worry about it because I have the silicone sheet underneath there. So I have this die cut out of the Spotlight on Nature that I did, and I love to mix mediums when I'm doing the blending pens. So I'll bring in a piece of grid paper. I'm going to use a blending brush. You know, this is going to be putting the blending brush into a balmy blue, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it onto my art piece. So this is tip number 7, combining Stampin' Blends with other color mediums like color pencils or watercoloring, or as I'm doing here, blending brushes. This adds some different textures and effects to your projects, to your scrapbook pages, or even to your cards, and it's just beautiful. Really helps show an artistic element to your project. There, I think that's a pretty good blue. Just a little bit more, I think, and then we'll be done with that one. And then what I did was I stamped the flower image I showed you from the Spotlight on Nature onto this die cut piece. And using several of the blends, I'm going to go ahead and color in to share with you tip number 8. And that is outlining first. So I really enjoy outlining first with my projects when I'm coloring, because for intricate images, when you outline it first, you could put the lightest shade in and then you can fill it in a lot easier. This is going to help prevent the ink from spreading outside of the lines, and it makes blending easier. So I put that all around first and then blend it in using a circular motion. And it also helps a lot when you work in small sections. So you can see that I generally work on one item and then I work on another item. So I go in and outline it first, do that area, and then I go in and I work on the next area. So that's tip number 9, working in small sections when coloring the larger images, because it helps prevent the ink from drying too fast. And then the ink stays wet and workable so that you can easily blend the colors in together, because that's what this is all about, Stampin' Blends. So if I've got that one, I always like to close it because I just get things on myself very easily. So I'm going to go ahead and go around the outside with this. And then you can use the lighter shade and just blend that in. The alcohol markers do dry lighter, so if you use it and you feel like it's a little bit too dark, be patient, because it will most likely get lighter as it dries. There. So a little bit of outlining and then blending it in again. And blending those colors in together, but it has dimension with the different colors in there. All right, and then the green onto the leaves. So you need to have patience when you are using the blending pens. The blending pens take time. It takes time to learn. It takes time to figure out your best technique, what works out best for you to use, because what works for someone else may not end up being what works out the best for you. So take your time. Don't rush the process. Experiment with those different techniques. Take your time to achieve the best results and what works for you. So my finished project with this card is this. And for the other butterfly card, it was this. Both of these are clean and simple type of techniques called CAS, C-A-S, clean and simple. But look at how beautifully the blender pens made parts of these cards just pop. Isn't that beautiful? All right, there you have it. My top 10 tips for using the Stampin' Blend alcohol markers. I hope you found these tips to be helpful and that they're going to inspire you to create some amazing projects. So if you enjoyed the video, please be sure you give it a thumbs up, all right? And I am really looking forward to talking to you again. Thanks so much for watching. and happy crafting. Bye bye.